colors had died away behind the black, murky fog of the hallway. Only a dull static remained on the TV. The mirror barely reflected his shadow back at him. The dull hum grew around him. He could feel it vibrate through his body, down into the floor, and up into the mirror. He continued to stare at the dark figure. Is this my essence, or is it merely what remains? Are the individual details what's most important? Or is the stretched, vague whole what truly matters? He leaned closer, trying to make out any feature that still remained. His forehead rested against the cold glass. His eyes zoomed in on the smallest of spaces. His features were blurred yet pixelated, like the static that permeated the room. The air felt warm, fuzzy, and suffocating as he breathed it in. His mind was clunky and disorganized. He agonizingly tried to hold his focus together and put together intelligible and coherent thoughts. What is happening? What is happening to me? What has happened to me? What am I? What was I? He could feel the confines of awareness fading. He was nearly unable to distinguish the darkness of the hallway from his own outline. If his face had not been resting against it, he would have already lost the mirror. He felt as if he were spinning in one direction, and the room were spinning in another. He grabbed hold of the wall and screamed, but was drowned out by the suffocating air.
and sat staring into a dark puddle on the ground, stirring his reflection with a stick. He enjoyed watching his face mix and swirl around. His tears had dried up, and he began to pay more attention to his surroundings. He was in a very small clearing. The fog seemed to stop right at the tree line that surrounded him on all sides. He wondered if Grace and Tate were still back at camp, but wasn't curious enough to get up off the log. He looked around. The fog weighed ominously on him, but he was focused on his puddle and trying to shape his face into different and funnier poses. Grace continued to slowly fight her way through the brush. The fog had gotten darker and thicker. She began to wheeze with each breath. She was out of shape, and her legs were getting tired. But she refused to take a break until she found him. Who was it she was looking for? Tate? No, it was Owen. She had to find him. It was becoming difficult to keep his picture in her mind. The wood and leaves seemed a blur around her. No matter how hard she strained her eyes, the world seemed to fall more and more out of focus. Maybe she would run across some of the others soon, and they could help her. Carla couldn't see where she was anymore. Branches kept slapping her face, and her body was bouncing from tree to tree as she fumbled about. Davin? Davin, where are you? She was frightened, shivering all over, and the forest was nearly pitch black on top of the fog. Where is everyone at? Who did I come here with again? Davin? Where did you go? Her foot sunk into wet mud, and she quickly pulled back. She spun around. Huge limbs swayed around in front of her. Then after a few moments, Davin walked out from the brush. Lyle was confused and disoriented. They were looking for the little boy, right? He tried to picture his face. He had lost sight of the others. Carla. Grace, he yelled. He began to get out of breath. Maybe it would be best to go back to the campsite and regroup. The boy could be back at camp already. And if not, they might need Davin and Emma's help. He didn't like the idea of them being alone together this long. Okay, I'm getting lost. I need to turn around and find the lake. Then I can follow it back to camp." He reoriented himself in the direction he thought the lake was in and continued on. His mind shifted between angry and depressed thoughts of Emma and Davin. Occasionally, he would yell out for Owen. He had worked himself into a daze. He dizzily laid himself against a tree and began taking deep breaths. His mouth was watering, and he felt a bit sick. Finally, he calmed down a bit and took in his surroundings. He could see a bit better now. Something rustled in the branches behind him. He turned around to look. Slowly, Emma came into view in front of him. She limply jerked her legs through the brush, looking past him as she moved. "Emma," Lyle exclaimed, "where have you and Davin been?" She looked at him confusedly. "Listen, one of the little boys is lost. I think we need to get back to camp and then try to find him." Emma stared into his eyes uncomfortably and grabbed his hands. Lyle froze up as she moved in for a kiss. Tate could feel the murky air grow colder and colder. The forest seemed to grow emptier by the moment. For the first time, he began to question his own safety. He was surprised that he had not found Grace or Owen yet. He stopped for a moment and thought hard. Who should he go after first? He felt bad for Owen and focused on his face as hard as he could. The staleness of the air dissipated, and his nostrils filled with the scent of fresh pine. He opened his eyes and could make out the silver silhouette of the moon in the sky. A beam of light barely filtered its way down into the woods in front of him. Tate made his way towards it. Below, Owen sat upon his log, playing with the mud puddle. A figure moved about the brush, slowly working its way closer. The other child made his way closer as well. Another was fading in the distance. Staring intently at a particular bush near Owen, something began peering out through it. After a few more minutes, large antlers rose up and protruded from it. The creature leered at Owen, its bloodlust rising.
Looking down upon it, he roared the name, Anil Hotnest.
The creature's eyes darted up into the tree. It spoke the word, Adsa, then faded away into the fog. Tate felt the air getting warmer and could see the moonlight radiating down over a spot in the woods just in front of him. There was a clearing just ahead. Tate took a deep breath and stepped out into it. Tate saw the fire sitting in the middle of the camp. Owen sat next to it, playing with his stick. He looked around, but no one else appeared to be there. Tate looked out at the lake and saw the shadowy figure sitting on the post, sticking up from the water. Grace felt lightheaded and airy. She moved throughout the fog, grasping at the air around her. Emma? Carla? Where did you go? Where is everyone? I can't see anything. What am I doing? This fog is so thick that I can't even see my hands in front of me. Where am I?
His forehead felt hot. His face was fragmented across the mirror. Red had been splattered across its sharp edges and blurred condensation texture. He stared at each piece of the puzzle.
Which are the pieces of me? And which pieces are fake? The room closed in around him.
On the one hand, he was suffocating. But on the other, he felt as if he were floating in a dark void. The red cut through the fog on the mirror like a river through the earth.
All visions blurred beyond comprehension. The static had been replaced by a murky smear across his reality. Where did I go? Who is this inside me?
What is this?
The TV had gone out, and all sources of light died from the house. The other two lay motionless. Emptiness pervaded all of their minds.